to the Success Agents Podcast, where we deliver weekly guests that bring insight into the elements of your business. Become profitable with knowledge, skills, and tools that help you with automation so that you have less procrastination. With your hosts, Chris Parsons and JP Fluellen.
What's going on, guys? My name's Chris. I'm with my co-host JP Fluellen, and thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Success Agent Podcast. Now, you can catch us here live on our Facebook page every Wednesday around 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, but we're also on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Stitcher. Basically, if you just look for us, you will find us somewhere. Last week, we had a special guest, Dino Costa. Dino is a radio host for The Fan over in St. Louis, I believe. And we talked about finding your voice in social media, but really just on online platforms, or just getting your voice out there and making sure that you're really being authentic and true to yourself. You're not creating some false character. No one likes someone who's false. This week, we're going to be talking about the advent of the iBuyer programs and what we're seeing and how it's affecting agents and what we're really predicting for the future. So going forward, have you been affected by the iBuyer program yet, JP?
No, we live in Wyoming.
Everything takes forever to get to Wyoming.
The world could end in Wyoming because we wouldn't even know it happened until 10 years later. We're just like, oh, crap. Kind of like, it just reminds me of like the dude from Peter Griffin from Family Guy, you know, he'd just be like, yeah, crap. Yeah.
It's actually a really good imitation. Have you ever seen? Yeah, I saw Seth do a live imitation of just the characters. Like he just went through the line. Man, that stuff's incredible. Just to, like, watch the same guy have different voices.
Oh yeah. Oh, stop it, Stuart Griffin. Oh, going to take over the world, Lois.
Well, anyway.
Peter. Stop it, Peter.
So that's a skill I didn't know JP had.
Yeah, man, I've been doing the impersonations for a while.
Nice. So kind of speaking as to what Stewie said, taking over the world, there's a lot of fear that companies like Zillow and Redfin are going to take over the real estate world, ultimately nix real estate agents entirely. At least that's the fear. Do you see that happening?
You know, I could see at some point that the buying side of the real estate transaction will go away. I don't ever see the selling side. Because I've always thought of real estate as two pieces. It's sales and service. When you're dealing with buyers, it's a lot of service. It's a lot, you know, opening doors, asking questions, having answers. You know, it's a lot of customer service in that regard. It's not a lot of selling, or if at all, in terms of the prices of the product have already been determined, you know, and I hate to say this, but it's almost like job coaching. You know, you're taking somebody around, and you're showing them the houses, and you're getting them in there so they can see everything. And they look at 6 or 7 houses. They figure out which ones when they buy. You sit down with them and you say, what are your things that you absolutely have to have, your wants, and then let's determine what it is that you actually need. And then you just have that, you're having an interview, and then you're going around, you're taking your client down to the different product, you know, through these different products, and then they determine which one's the best one. Then, you know, you're writing an offer and you submit it and and you go all the way down the line. And that's the buy side. Mm-hmm. Sell side, on the other hand, is I'm coming in saying I can do these things, and I'm convincing you from a salesman that you want to use me, and you are the product, and you're selling yourself to your potential client, unless it's a sphere or, you know, where it's a warm lead or something. But when you're interviewing with several other agents and trying to determine whether you're the right person or not, mm-hmm. That's the sales part. You know, you're trying to get them to know, like, and trust you. You're trying to get them to see the value proposition. You're, you know, just like you're doing with any product, there's all of these different things that you're trying to sell. And I don't think that part is going to go away. I think the sell side, because I
Mhm.
think there's just too many variables like from the selling side to just try to automate all of that.
Right. Well, I think that actually brings up a good point. So what I was going to say is a lot of, where you're going to be doing a lot of your marketing is going to be online. And you've already talked about how you believe that real estate will eventually go into like a virtual reality type thing where they bring like a Matterport in, they take a 3D picture, but this time it's actually kind of like Google Maps type where you can like walk through. I know they already have them, but instead, you use like a virtual reality headset or whatever, like an Oculus Rift or something, and you just take clients walking through the home. Um, Instead of driving, you're in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, so you got to drive an hour and a half to look at anything, and you could avoid all that. So if they were to get rid of the buyer side, my initial thought was why couldn't they get rid of seller as well? But at that point, who's going to show the houses? Um, in terms of like who's going to be the one managing the listing, having the pictures taken, doing the description, making sure everything's up to snuff so it actually sells, that kind of thing. So I can agree with you on they'll potentially get rid of the buyer side. um, I do see the issue arising though if people want like true customer service, because I don't think people want to buy a house like they buy a scooter or a bike on eBay. And that's kind of what I see the iBuyer model. When if it's all online, they just, hop on eBay, find the bike that they want and click buy it now. I don't think that would work for real estate. Whereas the selling side of things, it's more of a process. You do the same things over and over and over again. You have your system to sell something. Couldn't you see them actually taking the sell side away other than the buyer side?
You know, I mean, if you're looking at it from the perspective of if it's a partnership from the seller to technology,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still manpower involved. So someone has to physically go to the house and physically map the house out and physically get all of the, what are the particulars of that property? What's it made out of? Is it a ranch? Is it a two-story? Whatever it is. Is it a walkout basement? Is it not? How many acres? All that stuff. And I can see, in some respects, in non-disclosure states like Wyoming is that a piece of technology wouldn't be able to just jump on and suck all that stuff out of the internet and then just put it on.
Sure.
So there's a physicality of it in some regards that would be a barrier to making some of these changes in terms of that. I don't you can't because eventually it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have two pieces of technology talking to each other, and then they create a house sale.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I don't. There's no
it's
way.
not gonna work. You just can't do it. There's too many variables. I mean,
No.
you know, title issues. If anything arises as far as an issue,
Yeah.
uh, is in that regard. What it could end up being at some point is that um, real estate agents just become a uh, specific uh, to the role. So, like, you have an attorney, if you will. You
Uh-huh.
have an attorney, and they do divorces. So you're going to hire a real estate agent um, in on a different type of payment scale. Where it's like, okay, well, you're going to be married to this deal for 30 days, and now we've got XYZ, whatever. We want you to basically supervise this transaction
Hmm.
till it closes, and this is how we're going to hire you on. And now, but the problem is that you know they're not intimately involved anymore. In the
Right.
transaction, so you're coming in it after the fact, after they've already negotiated everything. Okay, well, now I need a real estate agent to supervise this transaction that we've made. Problem there is you get involved and you're like, oh, that's a mistake. Oh, that's wrong. Oh,
Uh,
we can't do that. Oh, you know, we that needs to be fixed. Oh crap, that's how much you asked for in repairs. Oh, well, now we have to negotiate that. Or, in some states they do a due diligence. How are you going to have a buyer and seller that are working with technology to negotiate repairs? Like
Right.
that's and if you do a for sale by owner and you have an attorney, the attorney doesn't care that you guys come to terms on repairs. They're there because of the transactional part of it. They don't get intimately involved in, two parties, battling it out over due diligence. There's a lot of moving pieces. I think whatever society decides as far as what direction we're going to go,
Mm-hmm.
I think, what's going to end up happening is if we eliminate the buy side, the sell side is going to end up, spending even more money to get a real estate agent that's competent to make sure that the transaction goes, in accordance in a lot of directions.
Sure.
I think it's problem. And at the end of the day, only the strong is going to survive.
Yeah. Right. So like I'm kind of wondering though, why couldn't, so you're saying two pieces of technology talking together. Yeah, I don't see, software A and software B resolving a deal and going through all those specifics, but why couldn't they just hire an agent kind of pretty much as like an hourly basis or salary basis, and they just go to a call center type thing. They manage the transaction from afar, and I mean, that's basically the negotiation. You have two different agents trying to manage the transaction from afar, but instead of getting paid a commission, they're getting paid some kind of hourly or salary type wage, um, in order to make these types of programs work.
So basically, they become consultants rather than agents.
Essentially, but instead of being the entrepreneurial consultant, they're just getting paid, whatever. I mean, so that you see it in medical systems now. You hardly see any primary care providers who have their own business. They usually get sucked up by like the bigger conglomerates. For us, it's UC Health. And the reason they do that is because they no longer have to worry about the stress of running and growing the business. The business just comes to them and they just show up to work every day and do what they already know what they're doing. Like this is exactly what they've been doing for years, but now they're just a different source of payment with a lot less headache depending on, the person's personality.
Yeah, the problem is that a real estate transaction is very intimate in some regards. Like, you have a seller that, you know, could have a multiple facet of things going on, whether it's, you know, a divorce or a death or uh, all of these different scenarios. And there's multiple people involved that aren't necessarily on the title of the transaction, but are involved because they're involved in some of the decision-making processes. And I think from afar, I think you eliminate a lot of those conversations if it's just, hey, we've the date of our contract is on XYZ and blah 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 blah. Now it's a 2-hour conversation, and you might not have the whole picture because you haven't been involved from day one.
Sure.
And so I think what could happen is, you know, if you're doing it from a consulting standpoint, it might, I don't know. I mean, the nice side of it is that, there's no agency, so that a lot of laws would have to be rewritten because
Yeah.
if you're involved, then there's no agency. You're just consulting.
Right.
And so from a consulting standpoint, I don't know. And I think it's problematic in a lot of ways, because there's just, they're calling in and say, hey, we're running, because really what it's going to end up being is, we have this problem. Here's the scenario. Okay, well, your time is $250 an hour, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then they spend 20-30 minutes explaining to you the scenario. You give them your 2 cents and then they hang up. Well, then they have another problem. They call back in and they say, here's the situation. and it's a different person, different agent, different area trying to consult that way too. I think it becomes inconsistent, I think too. Because if you look at it from my wife's a therapist, if you look at it from a therapy standpoint, and if you were doing therapy in 1 hour chunks, and every single week you had a different therapist that wasn't married to the situation, then the
Mm-hmm.
advice could vary by large degrees, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know how you can't have an agency
Right.
without, from a selling standpoint, I just don't see how you could do it.
Yeah, and so like the one thing is those major, big companies, they would need some sort of standardization for how the deal should go. And you're talking about, like you just said, agents who have different methodologies or ideologies on how they want or how they believe a deal should go and how certain situations should be handled. So there could be a lot of, I guess, mismatch between what parties want and what parties are hearing because of that lack of intimacy. But at the same point, if they were to get smart, let's just say this was the direction that they go. Agents end up being a consulting role. You see the population of agents get cut into like a quarter because now they're handling mass deals at an hourly basis instead of commission. Couldn't they just hire customer service reps to do all the talking with people to kind of figure out the situation and then send that to the agent so the agent has an idea on pretty much what's happening? I mean, couldn't you see that potentially working though?
Yeah, I mean, what the ultimately the deal is here with all of this stuff is that they're trying to reduce commissions. That's the ultimate goal. Is like, I think the
Sure.
deal is they're doing like you get all this stuff for 1%.
Right.
That's ultimately what they're trying to do. Now, in some respects, I think you could scale down some of the things, but if there's anybody out there listening that's done 15, 16, 17 deals in a month by yourself, you see why you pay the commissions you pay,
Mm.
because the behind the scenes stuff that goes on, multiple vendors and coordinating inspections and doing all that stuff. I mean, I always tell people, like, you may think it's easy on the back end and say, oh, well, it'd be so easy for me to just do 1% and do my bid online and not have to worry about anything. But then you're like, the stress level of all these different pieces that go on. And I always tell folks, is like, do you have another full-time job to do this? From the day that you go under contract, from the day that you close, do you have an extra 40 hours a week to coordinate all this stuff by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them say, well, no, that's why I hired you. I'm like, well, think about it. Like this is what we do, and we've got our processes streamlined. So there's more to it than just make an offer, go under contract, and then close.
Right. Of course.
That's why they say it takes 30 days to close on average,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of stuff that goes on, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. I think I think they're going to figure out some sort of model.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's going to be a hybrid. I don't,
Sure.
not unless they can, churn out, Watson versions of real estate agents, and they're just that
Yeah. We're so far off from actual intelligent AI to the point where it can handle something like that. So at least in the immediate future, I don't really see that kind of thing happening. There has to be human involvement. I tried for the longest time and you were one of my guinea pigs, to basically try to automate the entire lead conversion process, and it's impossible. At least it's impossible without a human. It just doesn't work. So if you're about to try that, if you're trying to formulate how to automate the entire conversion cycle, don't waste your time. It doesn't work. But kind of going off what you were saying with commissions, so ultimately the goal in all this is to lower commissions to entice the seller to want to work with a company like Redfin or whatever iBuyer offering is out there. Do you think real estate agents are making too much?
That's debatable. I mean, what it takes to run a real estate company, it takes a lot of capital.
Yeah.
Whether it's at home or in a physical location, there's still capital involved.
Mm-hmm.
But um,
And of course, it depends on where you're at, where
it
your
does.
location is.
It does. And the other thing too is it depends on if you have a good market or not.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your average sale prices. Because, dude, I just went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and like in some places, their average sale price is like 160.
Right.
So I mean it. And then when you think about all the fees that are involved in real estate too, like
Mm-hmm.
from day one, if you don't have 3 months of reserves in the bank, it's very, very expensive to be in real estate.
Well, I was
That's
talking to an
selling.
agent who, like, his average deal was like 60K. So obviously he needs to up his price ceiling because that's way too low. But after commission splits and the actual expenses of marketing and just running a business, then you get taxes taken off of all that. Like, his take home is nothing.
Yep. Well, and in some cases, if you're doing a lot of listings, you're putting up capital right from day one. I mean,
Right.
if you don't have an in-house photographer, you're paying for photography, you're paying for, depending on the house, drone footages, and you're paying for,
Mm-hmm.
um, flyers and mailings and online advertising and all these things in hopes that they will stick with you until you get it under contract and close.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you think about it, on average, if you're spending, there's guys like that are in the LA area that are spending, they're doing these extravagant parties at these listings in hopes that they will sell with them. And like, dude, I remember I went to a conference one time and this guy was spending around $50,000 per listing to put on these parties.
Well, how much was each listing? You'd be talking like a 5 million plus to
Oh
make
no,
that work.
they're between 5 and 20
Okay.
million. But
Okay.
but
That's a wild party, dude.
yeah, and some of these dude, are take 2 years to close.
Right. Yes.
And so I mean, you think about this: $50,000 a year till it closes for 3 years. You're 150,000, almost 200,000 in, and you're hoping that they're gonna stick with you to close.
Mm-hmm.
And then and on the countless amounts of text messages and a lot of these, what people don't understand is when you're in this kind of category, you don't ever talk to the person directly. They have like a handler that they go through.
Sure.
They basically intermediate for you because they're like, dude, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for that. That's what I hired you for.
Just sell my damn house.
Yeah, just sell the house. Like, you just freaking negotiate it and just get it done.
Yeah.
And then basically they sign the papers, and a lot of times it's virtual, so they don't even ever see the person until it closes, because they
Mm-hmm.
got to have a physical close, a physical signature to close, and that's it. That's the only time you see the person. When you
Right.
think about people in that category, so it's a whole nother animal. And when you think about like we're doing 6 events a year to continue our real estate business, and those things cost money. So people think that that, oh, these real estate agents, they make too much money. Dude, the national average for a real estate agent is 38,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. But that's really based on the personal or the person, not so much the profession. Because you got the people who come in, they do a deal or two or, three, obviously, depending on their location, and they can get that kind of money in, not in like not a significant amount of work. At least if you're talking like in Colorado, that's
Yeah,
about 4 deals.
and you're also looking at it from the perspective of that it's 100% commission,
Right.
and
I
that
think that
some
gets
of these people
lost.
are not full time.
Uh-huh.
But how do you determine whether you're full time in real estate or not?
That's a mindset, I would say. more than, because obviously you're not clocking in and you're not clocking out. Your only boss is yourself, unless you have like an overbearing broker. Um,
But it is a career, though. I mean, it's a
it's
career.
absolutely a career.
And when you're going to go into a career and they say, flexible schedule and limited income potential, and you go in and you realize how much work it takes just to get that first deal,
Uh-huh.
and you're talking the national average is 38,000. Well, and part of that too is how long does it take you to get to that 38,000, when you first get in the
Sure.
business. So, I mean, yes, there are people that are doing quite well in real estate and there are people that aren't doing so well. But, you know, it is what it is. The numbers are still the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make that determination on whether those commissions are worth it or not. But at the end of the day, like, if you sat down and showed people exactly how the money gets distributed, and in a lot of people's listing presentations, they have a breakdown in the listing presentation, like a pie chart that shows this goes to me, this goes to my broker, this goes to this, and then after I get paid my taxes and all my expenses, because it is a business,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's left. Then they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Sure.
Because it's just the thought process is that you're getting it all in one chunk, whereas most people get it over several weeks with their normal paychecks.
Mm-hmm.
So
With no guarantee of getting paid out anyway. So it's a risk versus reward type thing.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so going back to the iBuyer of like, let's just say they charge 1%, it makes you wonder how that's even sustainable then, given the amount of work that's required. Um, and once you really break down where the money goes, it makes you wonder if it's even worth it for them. Yeah, they might make a profit, but is that small profit really worth it for the amount of headache and frustration that a company could face to manage that level or that many deals all at once? Like you said, like there's so many moving parts, and I don't believe that it will ever come to a point where AI can handle everything. You can't have a computer negotiate with a computer on what a buyer and a seller wants.
Right.
That just doesn't work.
And at the end of the day, you get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the difference between buying a house for 100 grand and then hoping that all the repairs are going to pay out because you don't know what you've gotten yourself into it because it's as is where is,
Mm-hmm.
or buying new construction and you know exactly what you got because you told them what to put in it. You get what
Yeah.
you pay for. you know and well, how much are we going to have to tear out?
Uh-huh. And agents, in a way, are kind of like I mean, this shouldn't be misconstrued because we are not insurance, but in a way, we're kind of like insurance companies or a policy in that you have someone who's a professional looking over everything to ensure that the buyer or the client, the seller, doesn't get screwed over and they're not getting something that they want. It could be as something as simple as, they're buying a house that has some sort of HOA law that they want to be able to grill out every Saturday with their friends because they've done it for 20 years and that's just what they want to do, but they want to downsize to a townhome or something.
Yep.
And you don't have someone there to do the checks and balances to say, oh, well, in the HOA docs, you can't have a grill. Well, they go and they buy that house and then all of their plans are now ruined for this house and they hate every second of it, and they're on the buy side anyway. So it's not like they were never going to pay commission ever.
Yeah, and technology isn't going to read through those covenants to see if they can have horses when they're like, I want a horse property.
Right.
Well, you know, and or they wanted to put 7 outbuildings on there and it only allows for 1. Like these are all little things that like I have in my listing presentation, it has a 200-step action plan that shows all the things that we do, and it doesn't even cover everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the gamut is so big that I think that even if they come up with something, somebody's going to get sued because there's too many moving pieces in there that, that's why you pay for someone to have eyes on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Cool. Well, I think that was a good conversation. I think we'll just end it there. So ultimately, we really don't know what's going to happen with iBuyers. It sounds like, based on what we just talked about, we don't believe it's going to work. There's going to be attempts of it,
Yep.
but that's not to say it's going to work, or at least it's not going to work the way it is right now. Maybe some sort of hybrid model, as JP was saying, but of course, time will tell. Cool. So just to finish this up, why don't you just let people know how to get in contact with you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so you guys can get a hold of me at james.fluellen@gmail.com. You can give me a call at 307-772-1184 for a free 30-minute coaching call. And you guys can also check out my book, The Real Estate Brain, 7 Hacks on How to Buy Like a Pro. And that is on Amazon and Kindle. Just type in JP Fluellen in the search bar and the book will come up there. It's a pretty interesting read on just how you would love to have all of your buyers behave out there in the real world, with some fun anecdotes and things like that. So I think it's $4.99 or $5.99 on Kindle, and it's $19.99 on Amazon. And then yeah, you guys can find me on all social. Just type in JP Fluellen in the Google bar, and all that stuff will pop up. So look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. I actually heard you said Google bar, which reminded me. I heard one of the radio stations was like, "Hey, how do you tell if your kid's going to be a serial killer?" And it was they Bing instead of Google. It's like, what's that?
Awesome.
Cool, guys. If you want to get a hold of me, go ahead and reach out at chris.successagent@gmail.com. You can also reach out through our Facebook page. I'll message you back right there. Always looking for new guests, new interesting ideas. You don't have to necessarily be in real estate to get on this show. We're just looking for different perspectives, for different topics, and just bring it out to our audience and, help them learn a little bit more about something maybe they didn't know about as much prior to, and we do it all for free. We just do this for fun, guys. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.